Picture a world where knights, castles, and mythical creatures were not just stuff of fantasy, but a part of everyday life. Welcome to the dawn of the medieval era, a time that unfolded around 500 AD, following the dramatic fall of the Western Roman Empire. With the disintegration of this once mighty empire, Europe saw the birth of countless small kingdoms, each striving to fill the power vacuum left in the wake of Rome's collapse. This was an age of transformation, a period that witnessed the gradual spread of Christianity across these nascent kingdoms. The teachings of the Church began to permeate all aspects of life, from the highest echelons of power to the humblest of homes. Society was being reshaped, and with it a new world order was emerging. And thus began an era that would shape the course of history in unimaginable ways. As kingdoms grew, so did the need for a system to govern them. Enter feudalism. Feudalism, in essence, was a social structure that defined the relationships between the king, his noblemen, bishops, and the common people during the medieval era. It was a hierarchical system, a sort of pyramid, if you will, with the king perched at the top. The king was the ultimate landowner, the lord of all the lands, but managing such vast territories was no small feat. So, the king granted chunks of his land, known as fiefs, to his most loyal and trusted noblemen and bishops. These noblemen and bishops, known as vassals, were not just landowners, but also wielded significant political power. They pledged their loyalty to the king, promising to provide military services and protection to the kingdom. In return for their loyalty and services, the king offered them protection, creating a mutual bond of obligation. But what about the people tilling the lands, the peasants and serfs? Well, they were at the bottom of this pyramid. They were given land to live on and work by the vassals. In return, they had to provide labor, produce food, and pay rent. They were not slaves, but were tied to the land. If the land was given to a new lord, they went along with it. Feudalism was more than just a system of land ownership. It was a way of life. It dictated social norms and relationships. It determined who had power and who didn't, who was protected and who was vulnerable. It was a system that, despite its inequities, provided a measure of stability and order during a time of frequent wars and invasions. Feudalism was not perfect, and it certainly had its critics. But it was a system that allowed kingdoms to function, to defend themselves, and to maintain a semblance of order in a chaotic world. It was a system that, for better or worse, shaped the course of the Middle Ages. Feudalism, in many ways, became the backbone of society during the Middle Ages. Religion was not just a matter of faith in the Middle Ages, but a trigger for wars and a tool for conquest. In the heart of the medieval period, a series of religious wars erupted, known as the Crusades. These were not just any wars, but holy battles sanctioned by the Latin Church. The purpose, to recapture the Holy Land from Muslim rule. But the impact extended far beyond the battlefields, shaping the era in profound ways. The Crusades were launched in the late 11th century and spanned 200 years, involving thousands of knights and commoners alike. They were fueled by a potent mix of faith, politics, and a desire for wealth and power. For many, the promise of eternal salvation was a powerful motivator, a heavenly reward for earthly struggles. But the Crusades were not just about faith, they were also about power. The Latin Church, under the leadership of the Pope, sought to extend its influence across Europe and the Middle East. The Crusades served as a means to this end, consolidating the Church's power and authority. The impact of the Crusades on the medieval era was profound. They shattered the relative peace of the time, causing immense loss of life and destruction. They also led to a shift in power dynamics, with the Church becoming a dominant force in people's lives. Every aspect of life in the Middle Ages was touched by the Church, from politics and education to art and culture. It was the Church that set the moral and legal standards, controlled education, and influenced artistic expression. In a world where life was often brutal and short, the Church offered solace, guidance, and the promise of a better life in the hereafter. Yet, the Church's influence was not without controversy. Its dominant role led to abuses of power, sparking dissent, and leading to significant social and religious upheavals. The Crusades left an indelible mark on the Middle Ages, shaping politics, society, and culture. The legacy of these religious wars still resonates today, a testament to the powerful influence of religion on the course of history. As the Middle Ages progressed, curiosity began to eclipse fear, leading to an age of discovery. This was a period that saw the world expand in ways that were previously unimaginable. It was a time when intrepid explorers pushed the boundaries of the known world. venturing into uncharted territories and seas, their journeys fueled by a thirst for knowledge and the allure of the unknown. One such explorer was Marco Polo, a Venetian merchant whose travels to Asia, and particularly to the court of Kublai Khan in China, opened up a whole new world to Europeans. His detailed accounts of his experiences, recorded in The Travels of Marco Polo, painted a picture of a world rich in culture and resources, sparking interest and curiosity in the minds of many back home. While Marco Polo may be one of the more well-known figures of this era, he was far from being the only one. There were countless other adventurers who set sail, traversing the vast oceans and treacherous landscapes, driven by the promise of wealth, fame, or simply the thrill of discovery. Their journeys were fraught with danger, yet they pressed on, their eyes set on the horizon, their hearts filled with hope. These explorations had profound impacts. They led to the discovery of new lands and trade routes, which in turn led to an increase in commerce and cultural exchange. Spices, silks, and other exotic goods began to flow into Europe, transforming the way people lived and thought. The world was no longer seen as a small, static place, but as a vast, dynamic entity full of potential and promise. The Age of Discovery wasn't just about geographical exploration. It was also about the exploration of ideas and possibilities. It was about challenging the status quo and daring to dream of a world beyond what was known. It was about embracing the unknown and turning it into an opportunity for growth and development. The Age of Discovery was a turning point, paving the way for the world as we know it today. It was an era that changed the course of history, setting the stage for the many advancements and developments that were to follow. It was a time that truly marked the beginning of the modern world. Every era must come to an end, and so it was with the Middle Ages. As the 15th century dawned, the medieval era was on the brink of great change. A series of events had begun to unravel the fabric of medieval society, heralding the end of an era and paving the way for a new age. One of the most significant factors was the Black Death. This deadly plague decimated populations across Europe, resulting in profound social and economic upheaval. The loss of so many lives led to a scarcity of labor, which in turn shifted the balance of power. Serfs could now demand better conditions and wages, undermining the feudal system that had been the backbone of medieval society. At the same time, the 100 Years' War was causing its own disruption. This prolonged conflict between England and France not only led to vast loss of life and property, but also fostered a sense of national identity, further eroding the feudal system. The war also brought about technological advancements in warfare, with the longbow and cannon changing the face of battle. Meanwhile, a cultural revolution was taking place. The Renaissance, which began in Italy, was rapidly spreading across Europe. This period of renewed interest in the arts, sciences, and humanities marked a significant departure from the predominantly religious focus of the Middle Ages. The invention of the printing press during this time, for instance, allowed for the dissemination of knowledge on an unprecedented scale, challenging the Church's monopoly on education and information. These factors combined to bring about the end of the medieval era, but it was not an end without a new beginning. The social, economic, and cultural shifts that marked the close of the Middle Ages also gave rise to a new age, the Renaissance. This period of enlightenment, characterized by humanism, scientific discovery, and artistic innovation, would shape the course of history for centuries to come. The Middle Ages, a time of knights and castles, of faith and feudalism, of discovery and devastation, had come to an end, giving way to the Renaissance, a new age of enlightenment. The Middle Ages were a time of great change and development in history. It was a period when society's structure was reshaped by the rise of feudalism, with lords and vassals forming a hierarchy that defined everyday life. The influence of the Church was paramount, serving as a moral compass, a source of education, and a political power. Then came the Crusades, an intense series of religious wars that not only altered the course of history, but also left a lasting impact on global culture and relations. The Age of Discovery followed, an era of exploration that expanded the world's horizons, leading to unprecedented exchange of ideas, cultures, and goods. As the medieval era drew to a close, it paved the way for the Renaissance, a time of renewed interest in learning and the arts that marked the transition to the modern era. The Middle Ages, 1,000 years of history, left an indelible mark on the world, shaping it in ways that are still evident today.